Okay, about what age group were you during the Vietnam War?
16 to 22.
When did you first remember coming aware of the Vietnam War?
I think during the Gulf of Tonkin when
How
Johnson
old were you
was about, I don't remember it was 64 or 65. I remember I was at the Seattle Times. That was big excitement. We're going to go to war. We're going to go over and kill some commies.
Were you excited?
Well, I wasn't really excited about going. I was only about 16.
Did you think that you would go?
Later, I was afraid that everybody was going to go.
How did you know?
Well, as you got out of high school, pretty soon it was difficult to plan a future because I remember thinking of my future as a tunnel with no end. And Vietnam was out there and you didn't know what the future held for you. You made plans to go to school. You didn't know whether to make plans to get married or what to do.
Did you decide to go to college because of the war?
No, I was going to go to college anyway. But you had to stay in college. You had to get 15 credits every quarter. You had to keep your grade point average high.
So what happened when you flunked out?
Yeah, I flunked out of the University of Washington, and I had to get back into Shoreline Community College real fast. And I got a draft notice from the Army. And you had 1 quarter, as I recall. It's a long time ago. You had 1 quarter to get your grade point back up and to show that you were still in school and still going full time.
About what
And
year
I
was
went,
this?
well, this was 67. Went to Shoreline the summer of 67 and through the school year of 67, 68, then went back to the University of Washington again, starting in the fall of 68. But you couldn't take partial credits and work part-time. You didn't take 5 or 6 or 7 years to get through college like you do now. You had to stay at it the minute you were out of school. You were eligible for the draft.
Well, our history teacher told us that in 1968 they stopped that. They said that even if you were in college, you could be drafted.
You had to keep your grade point up. You had to keep your grade point up. You had to keep your credits up. They weren't taking you if you were in school full time.
Not even after that? She told us. How many times were you drafted?
Oh, you only got the draft notice 1 time, but I tried to join the Navy, and I tried to join the Coast Guard, and I flunked the physicals because I was heavy then like I am now.
Are you glad that you flunked the physical?
Well, I would have preferred not to go. There weren't very many who really wanted to go. And as the years went by, there were fewer and fewer. Like I said, in the beginning, we were all excited about it for the chance to go show off.
When did you stop thinking that?
It sort of was a gradual thing.
Just after it lingered on or something?
Yeah, after a while, you started thinking, I really don't want to go over there, and of course, the reality of it sets in. I remember up until I was 16, I had a paper route in Seattle, and I had a kid that lived on the route who was my age, and we were in school together. And he'd go do his paper route, and then he'd come join me on mine, and we spent every day doing the route together. His kid name was Steve Klein. Right out of high school, he got drafted. He wasn't very smart. He didn't go to college. And within a few months, I heard that his helicopter had gotten shot down, and he was killed.
Did you go to his funeral?
No, I don't go to funerals. But there were others that you knew, or names that you remembered, kids that you knew in high school. And then the reality of it starts to set in, and you really didn't want to go.
When you were drafted, did you ever think about going to Canada?
No. No, I do remember my dad surprising me one day when sitting around the dining room table in the morning looking at the paper. I don't remember when this was, but it was during the middle of it. And he was a veteran. And something had happened in the news that had made him angry. And he said if I was a kid nowadays, I'd burn my draft card. And I'd never forget that. It surprised me. Coming out of him.
So you never thought about?
No, I wasn't going to do that. That was a pretty drastic solution. There were ways to stay out of Vietnam and stay legal.
Well, that's only if you were in college.
And it was honorable. Yeah, if you were in college.
Did you think that was fair? I mean, all the poor people should go because they couldn't afford college?
I think poor people have a better chance. Of course, we could talk about that and get off the subject of Vietnam altogether. Poor people sometimes have a better chance of getting into college through scholarships and whatnot. I didn't really give it much thought then. My concern then was, these are the avenues available to me, and I intend to take them.
Our history teacher also told us that when you were in college, you had to take like a year of ROTC. Did you have to do that?
No, you didn't have. Only if you joined them. That was a military thing. ROTC is a military thing. They pay for your college, and when you're done, you owe the military 2 or 4 years of your time.
Do you know anybody who signed up for it?
I can't think of anybody offhand. I remember another friend of mine, Gary Miller, who joined the Marines because he was, his dad was a Seattle policeman. He was one of these macho guys, and so he did go overseas, and he survived it. But they all come back a little bit different. They weren't the same innocent kids when they went over. Kill or be killed. It just didn't seem to make any sense after a while. And then pretty soon you realize the government's starting to lie to you. I think that Vietnam was the beginning of beginning of the end of our political innocence in terms of government lying and deceit.
Was there a lot of protests on the
Oh yeah, the University of Washington, because I was a business major at the University of Washington. The School of Business was one of the ones that was targeted. There were bombs, there were demonstrations and sit-ins, and the ROTC building was always being targeted. But then the business Ballmer Hall at the University of Washington got taken over one time, and we were all dismissed, and there was no class. And then in 1970, when the war expanded to neighboring Cambodia, Nixon ordered bombing of Cambodia, and that was what really triggered a renewal of the protests. In 68, they'd been violent. In 69, they died down, and in 70, it got started again. And 70, in the spring of 70, was when Kent State happened. We've studied Kent State,
Ohio.
and it was so hard in the spring of 1970, which was my final quarter of college. I was a senior at the University of Washington. It was so hard to get to class and to maintain any kind of continuity of study and being able to concentrate on what you were doing that the entire University of Washington College was put on a pass-fail basis. All grading was suspended for the quarter, and you merely were given a pass-fail. So that was in May, as I recall, in the last month of my final
that
year.
was your senior year?
And basically you sort of stopped going to school and you showed up in time to take the test, and either you passed or you failed. I passed.
Beyond what age can't they draft you, do you know?
I don't know.
So after you got out of college, you didn't have
After
to
I got out, well, see, by then the draft had changed, and they were doing the lottery where every year they would draw numbers based on birth dates. And so if they drew July 15th first, then everyone whose birthday was July 15th and turned 18 that year would be number 1 on the lottery.
And that went off.
And then each, they picked all 365 days and gave them numerical assignments. And so if you were picked down towards the end, your chances of getting drafted were very, very slight.
Well, how did they do it before that?
Before that, they just threw everybody in a pot and drew names. And
They
I'm
drew
not quite.
names? I mean,
Well,
like
they
the whole
drew. They
country?
drew. It's been so long ago. Yeah, they drew names. Every
So-
state and every jurisdiction.
How many times did you have to go in to get a physical? Only once?
Only as a draftee once,
But after that,
twice,
how come?
because I tried to join the Navy.
You
I
wanted
didn't want
to?
to. Yeah, because when you're drafted, you go in the Army.
Okay.
You become a foot soldier, and I didn't really want to do that. But the Navy and the Coast Guard were also avenues, and I tried both of them. Basically, it's the same physical over and over again.
By your own choice, or just because you thought you'd have to go in there?
Well, if I joined the Navy, I figured that one way or the other I was going to have to serve, and at least I could have the choice. But I failed the physicals.
Did you have a lot of friends that were considered hippies?
Not really. No, because of when I was in college, the school of business wasn't a hippie hangout, so to speak.
What was the arts or something?
Oh yeah, arts and sciences, humanities.
Well, do you know friends that went over there when they came back? They just